Okay, good morning. Is it on now? My sense is it's not. Okay. Glad you all made it okay. As I told you in Rome, it's tricky to find, but we're good. This morning, for our introduction, I want to introduce to you, he's been around, Michal Balcerczyk to my left, who is a, applause. Michal's played well, since the beginning, has been a key part of this program and played a key part in this program in the planning. Michal is an associate professor in the faculty, we say school, they say faculty, of political science and international security. So without more, I wanted to give a short introduction. That's going to be followed by, on behalf of Loyola, Todd Waller, and Dean Arts and Sciences, Dean Peter Schrader. Michal. Okay.
Thank you very much, John. Director Waller, Dean Schrader, dear guests, and you students. I'm very proud and very honored to say hello and welcome on behalf of Polish co-organizers, the Nicolaus Copernicus University. And it is actually 14th time, isn't it? 14th edition of the program. I wish to thank you that you have chosen to come to Poland. It has been indeed an initiative that we value much. It's been, well, discussed. We have been meeting and calling and Zooming for many weeks and months to organize this. And we are indeed very, very happy to have you here. However, the themes, the topics that we discuss and that you have already started to discuss since Saturday are, of course, less, let's say, joyful and happy. As you know, very serious and disturbing things are happening in Ukraine, and it is important that we pay attention, that we try to understand better these phenomena and ask ourselves what went wrong and how can we possibly, what can we expect, what can we do to make things better. Well, someone said that we should not leave the world as it is, we should try to improve it. It's not always easy, but that's what we are trying to do. So I promised John that I will not speak too long. A warm welcome to everybody. I'm sure that we will have a great opportunity to discuss, to talk. You will meet some more Polish students today and foreign students. I see some of my students from Faculty of Political Science, Security Studies, hopefully also from the law school. And this will be a very intensive day. But again, thank you very much for being with us, and special thanks to all those who have contributed to organizing this program. So I think we don't need any official opening, but I consider this day as opened. Thank you.
Good morning. Can you hear me okay? So before we begin, there's a couple of students at the University of Copernicus who are studying human rights and international relations. There's a young man from Singapore and 3 women from Indonesia, and they've only been in Europe for 4 days. So we really want to thank you for coming, and you should take time. Yeah, so welcome. Okay, I'll be brief. I just want to also say to our students, the students from Loyola Chicago and the John Felice Rome Center, I want to thank you for spending your fall break on this trip. There's a lot of other ways you could have spent your fall break. Amsterdam, Dublin, Mykonos, Ibiza, and you choose to come here. And I think that's really honorable and a great statement about your generation and this commitment to what's happening right now in the Ukraine. So I think you should applaud yourselves as well, really. Okay. Just quickly, before you were born, there was a war in Bosnia, and there was a woman. Last night we were trying to hear, like, how can you engage? How can you take agency? How can you What can I do in this situation? We heard one way last night. There was a woman in Bosnia that was an American. Her name was Susan Sontag. And she wrote for the New York Magazine, and she's a New York intellectual, and she didn't know what the hell to do. So she just lived in the middle of a war in solidarity with the people. And she did a lot of other things following that. But she wrote a book in the 1970s. It was called On Photography. And this book is almost every photography course in every university in America you read on photography. And there's 0 photographs in that book. And the point, one of the points of the book was in the 1970s, way before the internet, we were just exhausted with images of war. No more, basta. I'll turn the channel, anything but this. And so I think for me anyway, when I come to a meeting like this, it really jars me, it turns me upside down and shakes me to kind of stay on that channel, keep re-engaged, okay? When this horrific war ends, there will be, and this isn't the good thing, but it's a reality, there will be billions of dollars going into the Ukraine. And whether you're studying art history or pre-law, economics, architecture, there will be multiple ways and needs for people to go to the Ukraine early in their careers and be involved in the rebuilding of this nation. So there's also ways you can continue, and some of you might. And Dean Schrader and Dr. Winginter and others are really good resources to kind of help you, direct you towards how would that happen? How could I work for an international organization as hopefully this comes to an end soon? So thank you, and thank you for being here very much. I'm going to pass to Dean Schrader. I apologize. We want to do a better job today of getting more input from you, participants, and I know this is really old school, but I'm an old dinosaur, and this is how I do things. I'm going to pass around Post-its, and I'd encourage you, if you have questions, comments, that we want to start to gather some more questions and see which are some patterns and do a better job of making time as best we can for more interaction with your comments. So I'm going to pass these around. Not everyone's obliged to do that, but if you'd like to ask a question or a comment or want clarity, we're going to do that. Thank you. Dean Schrader.
All right, thank you, Todd. So can everybody hear me okay? So as Todd noted, my name is Peter Schrader, and I'm the Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences at Loyola University, Chicago. And I've been asked to say just a few comments as Dean, and then also as a specialist of international relations theory, which has been my specialty as a faculty member for the last 32 years at Loyola. In terms of my comments as Dean, I would like to thank 4 groups of people. The first group, obviously, is everybody here in the Department of Political Science and Security Studies here at Copernicus University. I mean, we are so happy to be here in your beautiful city and your amazing university, so thank you for having and hosting us. Second of all, we'd like to thank Todd Waller and all of his staff at the John Felice Rome Center. So can the staff, can you raise your hands if you're the staff at the center? I mean, Todd and I have known each other since we both started at the Rome Center in the fall of 2003. I was a visiting faculty member for 2 years, and Todd was starting as the Assistant Dean for Student Affairs. And I think I can speak for everybody at the Chicago campus that we are thrilled that Todd is our newest director of the Rome Center, and that he has resurrected a lot of initiatives that are so important to Chicago, including most importantly the Symposium on Poland that all of you are at today. I think a third person I'd like to thank, where is Bojana McLeese? So Bojana, could you raise your hand so everybody can see you? Bojana is a professor in the College of Arts and Sciences and the director of our interdisciplinary Polish Studies program. She has worked tirelessly to create and lead a very vibrant program, including winning the award last year for the Polish scholar in the United States who has done the most to advance academics for Polish students and Polish studies in the United States. So if you have not met Bojana, she's a native of Poland. So thank you, Bojena. And then last but not least, we'd be remiss if we didn't thank our two alumni. So we have John Kurowski, who is obviously sitting here at the table with us, and then Bill Mahoney. Bill, where are you? Bill, he's hiding over there. I mean, these guys have worked, they have worked tirelessly to prepare this program, and I think John, this is now number 14 that you've been involved in. And when they were all your ages, so when they were in college, John was a history major and Bill was a political science major. And that stuck with them so much that they wanted to make sure that they could impart to all of you some of the things that they experienced when they were undergraduate students. So if we could give them a nice warm round of applause again. And then as a specialist of international relations, I'm a firm believer that this year of 2022 is a very important turning point in global affairs, just like 1945 with the end of World War II, and then 1989 with the fall of the Berlin Wall and the ultimate breakup of the Soviet Union. And I think that the current war in Ukraine and this conference are really critical to our understanding of international relations for three very important reasons, which I'll just very briefly touch on in 2 minutes. Number one, I think that the current war in Ukraine, just like 1945 and 1989, is going to be critical in deciding whether or not democracy and the rule of law or dictatorship remain the norm or emerge as the norm of the current international system. There's no question that during the last 15 years, democracy has been under threat in various regions of the world, and the number of democracies around the globe has declined during the last 15 years. And I think that a victory for Russia in Ukraine will strengthen that authoritarian trend in international affairs, whereas a victory for Ukraine and the United States and the Western European powers is going to help strengthen that democratic norm. So I think that's one very important turning point. And we have somebody else from Loyola, so we have Barry McCabe in back. Barry, can you raise your hand? So Barry has been involved in the rule of law program, the pro-law program that's a connection between Loyola Chicago and the Rome Center. Barry has a lot to say about rule of law and this entire issue, so if you haven't met Barry, please by all means do so. So that's number one. Number two, I think the war in Ukraine is also going to help decide which superpowers continue to guide and lead the international system into the future. And there is no question that the US-led international system that was put in place in 1945 and then strengthened in 1989 with the fall of the Berlin Wall, that system is under threat by a emerging China and a especially resurgent Russia and an authoritarian Russia. And in this regard, a Russian victory in Ukraine could very easily lead many leaders in various regions of the world, whether it's Africa, Asia, Latin America, to look to Moscow and then Beijing for guidance, rather than looking to Washington and the capitals of the other Western democratic powers, Paris, Rome, London. So this is a second critical turning point in history. And I think the third one that we really haven't talked about much is that the war in Ukraine is also indicative of the rise of regional powers in global international relations. And a regional power is a power that has a large population and significant economic and military resources, as well as a desire to try and set the rules of the international system within its individual region. And as students, when you think about, well, who are the regional powers around the world in the various regions? There's Brazil in South America, India in South Asia, Iran in the Middle East, and certainly Poland in Central Europe. And these are the powers of the future. And I think when you look at the current war in Ukraine, it's fascinating to see that you have powers like Iran, which are supporting Russia, and then you have others which are remaining neutral, you know, such as South Africa and India. And when you think of Poland, imagine how different the war in Ukraine would be if Poland, rather than aiding Ukraine, was on the side of Russia. I mean, probably the war would have already been over. So the role of regional powers, and especially Poland in this current conflict, are critically important, and that's why it's so appropriate that we're talking about the war in Ukraine, and we're doing so in Poland, which is the rising regional power of Central Europe. So thank you for allowing me to say a few words, and I'll turn the microphone back over to John.
You're released. Thank you, Peter. And I think I speak for Bill. We're honored to have Director Waller and Dean Schrader. It's clear he's as an internationalist, he adds tremendous gravitas to this program. So thank you, Peter, for coming. So our first, you want to stay up here now? And you'll be hearing more from Mihal later in the day. The program this afternoon is his baby, if you will. You got a microphone? Oh. Where's the mic? Oh, we have three now. Okay. So good morning again. The young lady sitting next to me is Marika Bagvalia. She is from Kyiv in the Ukraine. She's not living there right now because of the war. She is, I guess some people would say, a refugee, although we didn't get that far, but my good friend now, Tatiana Antipova, said she doesn't consider herself a refugee, and you might want to ask her about that. That's very interesting. But when I was here in May, my friend Marcin Kaldunsky, who I'll introduce later, introduced me and took me to various places where there were refugees and humanitarian centers. And one was a Chameleon monastery, a kind of an old seminary where they didn't have enough priests to fill it anymore. And the priest there, Father Roman, was setting up a refuge for Ukrainians. And one of the people I met was Marika, and after some time I asked her if she would join us and to help understand what's going on in Ukraine, to tell her story. And so she has agreed to do that. Father Roman was going to join us, but he had some serious family issues, so he couldn't be with us. Marika has come here of her own. She's brought her 2 children along, which we're looking after as well. But anyway, Marika, welcome. Speak.
Hello, my name is Marika.
Okay. Go ahead.
Do you hear me?
I don't think so.
Like this?
Get it close to your mouth, even though it's probably not
Yes,
real sanitary.
Yeah, I came.
Speak up a little.
Uh-huh.
Speak.
I'm
Forza, as he
a
tells.
lawyer too, but now I'm here in Poland, and I came in Poland on 23 of March. What else?
Okay, let's begin by talking about you've lived almost all of your life in the Ukraine, is that right?
Right.
But you're not a native of Ukraine, are you?
Right.
Where are you a native, your family?
Yeah, I was born in Georgia in 1990, and when Russia invaded Abkhazia, my family fled the war and went to Ukraine. So, and now the situation became the same, and I, with my two daughters, fled the war in Ukraine that was started by Russia. And
Okay.
now
Can everyone hear her okay? Yeah. Speak up a little. If you yell into the microphone, we will not be offended, okay?
I'm trying.
I know, I'm sorry. It's,
Okay.
you're speaking naturally. So, all right. So you, in effect, have been, you were 2 years old when you left Georgia with your family.
Right.
With your parents and your brother.
Yes.
And then you went to Kremenchuk in Ukraine.
Yes.
And I think you told me the reason that you did is because your father was going to college there and kind of
yes.
studying abroad.
Yes, my father was learning in Polytechnic. That's in it's university in Kremenchuk. It's in Poltava region. And that's why when the war started, he decided to choose this city to bring his family there. So that's why that's why almost all my life we was living in Ukraine. In 2008, I decided to learn law and pass exam in National Taras Shevchenko University, and that's in Kiev, based in Kiev. So from this, since this period of time, I was living in Ukraine, in Kiev, I mean.
So you're married, your husband is Alexander?
Yes, I'm married.
And he's in Kiev?
And my husband's still in Kiev, yes.
Because of the war, and you have two children, Tina, who's a year and a half, and Sophia, who is 10.
Yeah, right.
So
thank you.
Let's talk about a little bit about what happened. In the week or so before February 24th, where were you?
Okay, on 13 of February, I decided to go to visit my mother and father in Kremenchuk. And my husband should to work, stay in Kiev. So when the war started, I was in Kremenchuk, and my husband was in Kiev.
Right.
We was apart, and on 24th of February, at the 5 a.m., my mother entered the room and said, "Marika, we suppose the war start," because the sirens was screaming, and we started to. We took our alarm bag and go to find some basement and shelter.
Okay, so just so everybody gets the geography, Kremenchuk is like 350 kilometers southeast of Kiev, right?
Right. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And that's where your family is. You still have extended family in Georgia, is that right?
Right.
But your family has been here. So you've told us about the beginnings of February 24th in Kremenchuk.
Mm-hmm.
You were in Kremenchuk. Your husband was in Kiev.
Mm-hmm.
So you were visiting your parents for a couple of weeks.
Right.
Is what that was. So when you were in Kremenchuk, what did you see about the war? Were there shelling or bombing or missiles? So what happened on that day?
On that day, the sirens was alarming almost all day, and it was like it meant that it can be air attack by missiles. So we went to basement that was in the store nearby my home, but it was closed at 5 a.m. unfortunately, so my family and all neighbors started to find other place for shelter. So we went to the kindergarten. There was shelter too, and so. But we tried to enter, but it was closed too. We started to scream, and guard was sleeping. So, but actually, at the last, we entered the shelter and stayed there for 40 minutes. First time, then again after 1 hour again. 1 hour, and so 3 times per day, per morning, we went to this shelter. It was quite a small room, basement, and there was sand on the floor. So when the people was crossing the room, it was nothing. There was no air to breathe. So when after some, I think the next day when the sirens was alarmed, we decided to go to shelter that a basement that was in our building, because it was not convenient always to go to the kindergarten.
So you sheltered there. So you went in 3 different shelters on February 24th.
Yes, the last one was our corridor.
Your actual building, and
Yes.
to find a place, because you didn't expect this invasion. You weren't prepared for that, right?
Yes, we were prepared. We used the rule of double wall. It means that if
Yeah, the shelter. But I mean, in terms of the Russians invading on February 24th, that was a surprise, wasn't it?
actually we know that it's some problems with Russia, that but we can't imagine that the war can start in 21st
Right.
century in civilized society.
So let's take
It
you back
was
to when you were in Kremenchuk then on the 24th. Your husband was in Kyiv, and did you speak to him that day?
Sure.
Yeah, what did he tell you he was seeing in Kyiv on that day?
Yes, he see that it was ground fights and weapon shooting, and they tried to shelter in a metro station, but sometimes it was closed because there was a lot of people, too much people. So they sheltered in basement too, in a building, and actually it was hard times and very. We don't know what to expect.
So he told you he saw people actually, gunfights, people
Gunfights.
shooting,
Right.
and I think you also told me he saw people looting in Kyiv.
Right. Yes. And it was very. We don't expect this, but because we don't expect for war, but what to do? The reality was other.
So let's fast forward then about 3 weeks. Did your family then come all your family come to Kremenchuk?
Yes.
Your husband?
Yes. After 3 weeks, the roads was open and traffic jam was little bit not so big, but so my husband and decided to went to Kremenchuk to meet us and decide what to do next with his mother and sister. So
Okay, I think you told me then you had a number of family meetings to talk about what you were going to do, right?
right, and when he came,
Ultimately, what did you decide to do? What happened?
we decided to went to west of Ukraine in Yaremcha city, that is in Ivano-Frankivsk region. It's near the Lviv, if you know.
Yeah, it's a western city, Yaremchi, near Lviv, but
Yes.
that's where you went.
Yes,
Right.
and because as we suppose there was little bit safer than in
Yeah.
East or Central Europe, Central Kiev.
So tell us about that, a little bit about that journey. Who was along? Your family, the four of you, and then your father?
Yes, we was like me, my husband, my two daughters, our two daughters, my mother, father, brother, and his wife. They all decided to bring us to in the West Ukraine, and they back in Kiev and Kremenchuk. So they, but we didn't had like a passenger big car. So my father had a cargo car. So we should use it, and we make some chairs there, and at the 5 a.m. yes, we decided to we joined some convoy of cars and started our journey to Yaremcha. But approximately after 30 minutes from started, we had like
Okay, how long did it take you then to get to Western Ukraine?
oh, it took 3 days.
Right.
Without any possibility for taking up. I mean, in the motels or hotels, because all of them was full. No free rooms, and also it was even in foyer. It was. There was people lying down the floor. So
you weren't able to get a hotel or a motel, or there was
no
nowhere
place.
to stay. And
Yes,
you slept in
no.
your car,
Yes, we slept 3 days.
and it
in
was
car
winter
with
time.
children, 8 people in one car, cargo car.
And you said a cargo car. As I understand, you were in a van that didn't have any seats because it was used for something else. And
We used
you
chairs.
made do,
just,
yeah.
Yes, we do some.
Not a very comfortable journey, was it?
No, we don't have other chance.
So when you reached Yaremche, did I pronounce it right? Well, what did you do? How long did you stay there?
About 3 weeks too. We stayed in Yaremcha, but actually we had our apartment was rent for other people when we came in Yaremcha. So we started to find some other place for staying. So it was quite difficult, but at last we find one man who proposed us some rooms in a second floor of his home, of his house. But this second floor was like not ready for living because there was no stairs equipment, no.
Yeah, you said there was
it was
no
very
heat.
cold.
There was no heat.
No
So
heat.
he
yes.
brought in what we would call space heaters, but
Right.
that didn't. So you were cold and hungry,
Yes. Hungry, no.
to be honest about it. Okay.
Yes, but
So-
cold for sure.
Ultimately, then you decided to cross the border, right?
Right.
And your
Actually, it was not my decision. I didn't want to go.
how did that come about then?
What?
How did it come about? I understand it was not your decision. How did it come about that you ended up in Poland?
Okay. First of all, we should to do something because the conditions and the place we stayed wasn't very well. It was some hardships for us. So my husband said there is no safe in Kyiv, so you should go abroad to Poland because I have some relatives, aunt and uncle in Warsaw. So he brought us to the border and back to Kyiv, and we went to Warsaw by
Yeah,
bus.
he went back to Kyiv, and you
Right.
took a bus to Warsaw.
Yes.
Yeah, I understand. And you had some relatives there. You had an aunt and an uncle.
Yes.
So did you stay with them for a while?
Yes, for some period of time, but there was a room, 16 square meters, so and there was only one bed, and they had a dog and my daughter.
So it wasn't big enough to accommodate
yes,
the three of you. So
was
did you then look for some other place in Warsaw?
yes,
And by then I think we're probably, in early April, right?
right.
Yeah.
Right.
So you went, tell us about your effort to find some other place to live in Warsaw, you and your two children.
Yes, but we faced some issue that no one wants to rent apartments for refugees with children. We was
So you weren't able to find a place.
right.
Is that right? I mean,
Right.
Poles have been very welcoming, but it's it
Right.
wasn't that easy.
Poland really is very open, and thanks Poland for everything. But I talking about my story, and the problem I faced. Unfortunately, it's life, and it's normal. I'm not disappointed or something else. Just trying to take reality as it is.
Yeah. So ultimately, you ended up at the home of the Chameleon Fathers. I guess do they call that a monastery?
Yes.
Yeah. So.
But they call it homes for Ukrainian guests.
Yeah.
So they don't call us
It-
refugees.
It got a new name.
Right.
So the
You know.
priest there, Father Roman, who I met then, was taking in Ukrainian people, refugees like you.
Mm.
So then you went there, and you've been there since when? April?
Mhm.
How long have you been with Father Roman?
How long?
Yeah.
I'm now there.
Yeah. When did you come there?
I'm come in monastery in 15 of April.
Okay, speak up a little more. Okay.
15 of
April 15th, and you've
April.
been there since April 15th.
Since there.
So 6 months.
Yes, and now I'm there too, living in this shelter.
All right. And how has that been? Tell the students and the folks as to your experience there.
Okay. First, I was scared because it was so big monastery, no people around, and I wanted to ask someone, how are they doing here? Is it some rules for refugees, what we should do or what we shouldn't? Because I have two children, and it's some loudly. So I met some woman at the kitchen, and she said, don't worry, everything will be okay. Father Roman is a very kind man, and he will help you with all your issues. Don't worry, and I believed her. So I decided to stay there, but my older daughter Sophia was very disappointed. She said, no, I'm scary in this place. It's not like I get used to some other place, you know.
So you've kind of settled in, though. You're comfortable there now?
But now it's really became for us like a home.
All right. And Father Roman is a kind man, isn't he?
Really, he is a good man. He helped us for medicine and for...
Yeah, I was deeply impressed. So let's talk about Sophia. Has she been attending school?
Sophia attends Polish school now, Polish classes from September, and but besides this, she attends Ukrainian school online because I suppose that we will back to Ukraine on September or on the end of September or October. So, but unfortunately, we can't back because of situation of 10th of October. You know that.
But she had access to remote lessons in school from the Kiev.
Yes, he has a lot of lessons and a lot of homeworks to do, but I'm trying to support her and help her with this. But I don't. Why I decided this? Because I didn't want to lose. Because I didn't want to lose the opportunity to study in Ukrainian school. You know.
Yeah. But she is attending a Polish school.
Yes, she attended Polish school.
And she's learning
offline,
Polish, right?
Yeah. Huh?
Offline, yeah. And she's learning Polish. She doesn't speak Polish.
He speaks Polish a little bit. Actually, it's enough for for make some homeworks, but it's difficult for sure.
Yeah. All right. So, when you were in the Ukraine, you worked as a lawyer, right?
Right.
For a law firm, and you're not doing that now, right?
No.
You can't do it. How are you spending your time?
But I am writing articles for one charity foundation that helps Ukrainian refugees. So,
how long have you been doing that?
Huh?
How long have you been doing that?
From July, I have signed contract with them.
Your husband, obviously, you've stayed in close touch with. By
yes.
One benefit of cell phones and everything is you can do that. Did he have an opportunity to visit recently?
Yes, he visited us on September, middle of September. It was like some business trip, and it was only 5 or 6 days, and it was not enough, but it's better than nothing.
Yeah, because he's required to stay in the males are required to stay in the Ukraine.
Yes, he is helping.
So, Marika, I thank you for that. I guess my last thought, if you want to share with the ladies and gentlemen, is what are your hopes and fears for the future?
My worst fear is that war will not end so far, because when I visited my relatives in Georgia, they always talked that almost 1 year and we will back in our homes in Abkhazia, that they live. And I hear it now too for them. So then they live in two realities. They can't pass past their past life, and they can't live future life. So they're in the middle of situation. I don't know, and I'm very scared in that I want to take reality as it is, and as I have one life, and live it with dignity, with some honor,
Yeah.
good life, yes. And
you don't feel comfortable going back to Kyiv now, right?
no, not after the situation of 10th of
Yeah.
October. No,
Of the last week, it's still there.
but unfortunately, but I'm very hope so, and I believe in our armed forces. Our men are really so strong, and it's not only words, you know, it's really, it's reality.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much for coming. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, we have our next speaker, next guest, Tatiana Adamska. Tatiana, may I invite you to the table, please? Just give us 1 minute. There is a presentation that we would need to upload. So maybe let's take 1 minute just for technical issues, all right? I think we're ready. So, okay, because the coffee break will be in later, right? Okay, Tatiana, I'll just powiem parę słów i będziemy mogli zaczynać.
Okay, we'll recommence now. We're all set, right, Michał?
Okay, so Tatiana Adamska will tell you about her experience and her story. I'll try to be useful also by translating, by interpreting. Tatiana knows English very well. She understands. It just makes her more comfortable if there's translation or interpretation provided. So I'll do my best. But again, firstly we will have presentation, then some questions. We'll talk a little. Tatiana, to może zacznijmy od prezentacji. Let's start with the presentation, and the floor is yours. Well, I will be just, translating at this point, okay?
Okay, thank you. Słychać mnie teraz już słyszę. Mieszkam w Toruniu, przyjechałam z Ukrainy, pochodzę z Ukrainy, z miasta Winnica.
Look, morning, I'm from Ukraine. I come from the town of Vinica.
Skończyłam w Kijowie studia na Międzynarodowym Akademii Zarządzania Biznesem i po 5 latach studiów w Kijowie przyjechałam do Torunia w 2005 roku.
I graduated from a Kiev-based University of Management, and after graduation in Kiev, I arrived to Poland.
W Polsce nigdy nie pracowałam na etacie, a zawsze miałam swój biznes.
I've never worked in Poland, let's say on a tenure. I've always been a businesswoman.
Na początku zaczęłam od prowadzenia agencji zatrudnienia i zatrudniałam około 200 osób.
I started as an owner of a business that was actually an employment agency, and at the beginning there were 200 employers in my business from Ukraine. So.
Później zobaczyłam, że nie mogę kierować tych pracowników do branży budowlanej, która bardzo dużo pracowników potrzebowała i wtedy założyłam kolejną swoją firmę remontowo-budowlaną.
All right. So on the beginning, there were some difficulties with finding employment actually for the workers in the construction business. So later, I set up my own construction business.
Do branży budowlanej kierowałam tylko mężczyzn, a żeby kobiety też z Ukrainy miały pracę, to ja założyłam firmę sprzątającą.
So this second business of Tatiana's was basically for men working in construction business, but in order to also provide some possibilities, employment possibilities for women, Tatiana set up a third company, and this time for ladies coming from Ukraine, and that was basis in about cleaning services.
Na dzień dzisiejszy ja prowadzę stowarzyszenie, które zostało założone podczas wojny na Ukrainie.
And apart from that, now I'm busy with an association that we set up during the war in Ukraine, an association that is its main task is to provide assistance.
Dzisiaj chciałabym wam pokazać bardziej działania, które podejmowałam tutaj w Toruniu, w Polsce i jak wiele osób mi w tym pomagało.
And today I would like to share with you my experience, not only mine but also my co-workers, how we responded to the emergencies here in Torun.
Zaczęło się wszystko od tego, że w dniu 24 lutego w biurze ja powiedziałam swoim pracownikom, że zaczynamy działać, zaczynamy pomagać.
So it all started on the first day of war when I told my employees that we need to help. We will start responding on the very first day.
W dniu, kiedy zaczęła się wojna, ja dostałam bardzo dużo telefonów od swoich przyjaciół z Polski. To były łzy, bardzo dużo emocji, jak również dostałam bardzo dużo powiadomień, jak pomóc.
On the very first day, I received a lot of phone calls, text messages from my friends, colleagues in Ukraine. There were tears involved, and there were lots of questions about what's going on and how can we help.
Jedyne, co mogłam w tym dniu zrobić, to postawić nasz firmowy samochód koło naszego biura i tam od razu zaczęli wszyscy przywozić dary.
So the response was immediate because the first thing I could do is to make my car available, a car used for business. And on the very first day, people were starting to bring items, to bring goods.
To było niesamowite, jak informacja rozchodziła się bardzo szybko, że właśnie w tym miejscu jest jedna z pierwszych zbiórek i nie trzeba było niczego więcej mówić, po prostu wszyscy przywozili.
It was amazing how message was spread, how news was spread, because you didn't need to let's say encourage anybody. People just started to come and bring items, bring goods.
26 lutego, w trzecim dniu wojny, ja założyłam grupę na Facebooku Pomagam Ukraińcom w Toruniu.
On the third day of war, I started a Facebook group on Facebook, and its title was I help Ukrainians in Torun, and not only in Torun.
Dlaczego napisałam, że tylko w Toruniu? Dlatego, że przez te 2 dni ja dostawałam telefony z całej Polski i próbowałam zakwaterować osoby, Ukraińców, którzy do mnie zwracali się po całej Polsce.
So, actually, I decided to focus on the Torun area, even though I received also many phone calls from all over Poland, actually, of those who are seeking opportunities how to help.
ja zrozumiałam, że ta skala jest tak duża i tak dużo osób potrzebuje pomocy, że lepiej skupić się tutaj lokalnie.
So I understood at that moment that this is huge, that this was huge, and so many people need help that we need to organize it somehow. We cannot do everything at the same time. So I decided to focus on those wishing to help in Torun and in Torun region.
I w tej grupie było tylko 3 posty, że proponuję transport, czyli osoby, które chciały jechać na granicę, żeby odebrać z tych dużych kolejek rodziny z dziećmi.
So in this first phase, this immediate response phase, there were 3 main, let's say, aspects. So the first thing was transport. So Tatiana offered the immediate possibility of transportation for those who wanted to go to the border. I mean, those wishing to help, who wanted to go to the border and assist and help there.
Drugi post był o tym, że pod tym postem można było umieszczać informacje, kto chce przyjąć do siebie rodzinę z Ukrainy.
The second aspect, also the second, let's say, step, possibility was to advertise about, so to make it available to those who wanted to offer accommodation, to offer some lodging to Ukrainians.
W ciągu 4 dni od zamieszczenia tego postu ja miałam ponad 300 zgłoszeń rodzin. W ciągu 3 dni już było 300 postów.
All right, so during 3 days of that website, I had already 300 offers from Poles wanting to offer accommodation.
No i ostatni post to był właśnie żywność, którą ktoś mógł nam przywieźć, żeby rozdawać.
And the third aspect of our activities related to that website was the announcement that those wishing to bring food, wishing to bring some clothing, other items are also welcome, and they can do that, and Tatiana would coordinate that.
Ta grupa w ciągu 1 doby do tej grupy dołączyło prawie 1500 osób.
Almost 1500 people joined the group on Facebook during
w ciągu 24 godzin.
Okay, over 24 hours actually. 1500 new people subscribed to that group.
I w ciągu 2 tygodni było 5700 osób.
And after 2 weeks, 5700 people wanted to be part of that group.
I proszę mi uwierzyć, że każda z tych osób chciała ze mną skontaktować się.
And please believe me that each and every of that 5700 people wanted to contact me directly.
Ja już wiem, że Messenger ma jeszcze dodatkowe 2 foldery i te wiadomości inne i spam i te wszystkie foldery też mogą być zapchane po maksu.
So that was when I realized that the Messenger has 2 additional folders like the other messages and spam messages, and both of these folders were actually full in my case.
Kiedy zaczęłam bardzo mocno działać w Toruniu, to trzeba było te moje działanie, moją inicjatywę prywatną jakoś sformalizować. Trzeba było zarejestrować, żebym mogła współpracować z urzędami.
So we started immediately, but this initiative required some kind of institutionalization. I had to register it in order to cooperate also with local administration, so we needed a registration.
I tutaj wydarzył się kolejny cud. Ja założyłam tą firmę to stowarzyszenie Dobra dla Dobra w ciągu 2 dni i nazwę już miałam, dlatego że jeszcze 8 lat temu chciałam założyć takie stowarzyszenie i wymyśliłam już do niego nazwę.
All right. So in fact, it went smoothly and quickly. It didn't take long at all. This association was set up in 24 hours. But interestingly, the name of the association was in my mind already for the last 8 years. It's been 8 years ago that I already had an idea of setting up such an association.
My pierwszych dniach wojny my zbieraliśmy bardzo dużo darów, które wywoziliśmy od razu na Ukrainę.
So in the first days and weeks of our activities, indeed a lot of goods were collected, and we organized the transport of these goods. They were immediately transported to Ukraine.
Co tydzień wyjeżdżało po 5 aut właśnie na granicę lub na Ukrainę.
So 5 vans weekly were packed and sent to the border with goods brought by individual people.
Tutaj widać właśnie jakie rzeczy do nas przywożono.
And you can see on these photos what kind of goods were brought. These are actual photos from those donated goods.
My przygotowywaliśmy dużo paczek dla osób, które stały w kolejkach, żeby wjechać do Polski.
So we prepared a lot of, let's say, packets, boxes to have the necessary goods for those who were queuing on the Ukrainian side and waiting for their time to enter Poland.
Osoby tam stały 2 doby, 5 dni, te osoby stały w kolejkach.
Because it took 2, 3, 4, 5 days at the very beginning in that queue until the persons could cross the border.
Dlatego Polacy z Torunia, którzy wyjeżdżali na granicę po rodziny, zawsze mieli u siebie jakieś ciepłe jedzenie, ciepłe kocy w samochodzie, żeby ogrzać te osoby, które wtedy w zimę stali na ulicy.
So the Poles traveling at the border and bringing help and offering accommodation, they always were trying to have in their cars some warm blankets, but also some food that could be warmed up, because the people who were waiting in the queuing on the Ukrainian side were usually cold. It was the end of February, beginning of March, and therefore they were indeed. It was very cold at that time.
W marcu my nie mieliśmy miejsca, gdzie zbierać te dary, bo nie byłam do tego przygotowana, nikt nie był przygotowany na taką sytuację i zwróciła się do mnie lokalna firma, która zaproponowała nam duże pomieszczenie zupełnie za darmo.
Well, in fact, we were not ready for that. That was unexpected. We didn't have enough space also. So at that time, a local company contacted me who offered a large facility where we could store the goods and later donate them.
My pracowaliśmy od rana do późnego wieczoru i cały czas do nas przychodziła, kolejki to już z późniejszego okresu, bo na początku te rodziny, które przyjeżdżały, to oni nie wiedzieli, że można przyjść po taką pomoc.
So the queues were there as well, but the thing is that we were really working quite hard from the early hours until late hours. So on the very beginning, the people who just arrived were actually also not really aware that they can be assisted, that there are some goods for them. That came later. So in the beginning, it was let's say a bit chaotic, but later it developed.
Sytuacja tak zmieniała się codziennie, że ja musiałam dostosowywać nasze działania i kierować tą pomoc tam, gdzie była ona potrzebna akurat w tym dniu.
So situation was dynamic because with time different things were needed. So I had to adjust and adapt to the needs. Every day you heard that some other goods are needed and necessary. So we had to adapt.
Wiedzieliśmy, że te osoby przyjeżdżają tylko z małym plecaczkiem, dlatego zbieraliśmy walizki.
Some people came just with very little backpacks, so we were also collecting some suitcases. Yeah, suitcases, and so depending on what they needed.
W tamtym czasie bardzo staraliśmy się, żeby dzieci z Ukrainy bardzo szybko poszli do szkoły, żeby nie nudzili się w domu. Dlatego zbieraliśmy dla nich plecaki.
So we were trying to get what was necessary, like school bags also for children who just arrived, because we wanted them not to stay home, but try to at least have some education, to go out of home, not to get bored at home, so school bags and school items were collected.
Zebraliśmy ponad 600 plecaków dla dzieci.
More than 600 school bags were collected.
No i osoby, które przyjeżdżały ze starymi telefonami, dostawali smartfony, bo oni potrzebowali dostęp do internetu.
Well, communication and access to internet was very important, so the persons who came to Poland, had some phones, some old phones also, but we were trying to offer also some more modern smartphones for those who couldn't afford them, couldn't have them, because, well, it was necessary, it was essential for them to be in touch also with their families and to be, to have access to internet.
W pierwszych dniach wojny bardzo dużo osób przyjeżdżało do Polski, bardzo dużo dzieci przyjechało do Polski na zaproszenie różnych sportowych klubów i asocjacji sportowych, organizacji i te dzieci przyjeżdżały bez rodziców.
In the first days and weeks of war, a lot of children arrived to Poland at the invitation of some sport clubs, sport association. However, lots of these children came unaccompanied, so underage kids coming without parents to Poland.
Tylko żeby każda osoba zarejestrowała się w Polsce, ona musi mieć opiekuna prawnego, rodzica.
But it was also required that for children coming to Poland, it is necessary also that they have some legal guardian. So that was a problem at some point.
Ja jestem też tłumaczem i zapraszano mnie do sądu, żebym ja tłumaczyła takie właśnie rozprawy sądowe, gdzie przyznawano, udzielano opieki prawnej.
So because I'm also professional translator, interpreter from Ukrainian to Polish and vice versa, I was also asked to the court to provide translation from Ukrainian into Polish to arrange the formalities concerning legal guardianship.
Takich sytuacji było dużo, ale ja wam o takich dwóch sytuacjach opowiem, kiedy jeden chłopiec hokeista właśnie z 2 siostrami przyjechał tutaj i poszukiwali opieki i domu.
There were lots of such situations, but I just would like to briefly tell you about 2 of them. So first of one is a boy, a hockey player, who arrived to Torun with 2 sisters, and they were looking for guardianship.
I druga sytuacja, taka troszkę, która mnie dotknęła bezpośrednio, to jest historia chłopca Bogdana.
And the second situation, which actually affected my life and me personally, was a situation of a 17-year-old boy, Bogdan.
Bogdan od pierwszych dni wojny przychodził do nas do punktu pomocy i pobierał jedzenie i prosił o jedzenie gotowe i ciepłe, bo nie miał gdzie go przygotować.
Bogdan was coming to our assistance center asking for some help and some food, and his kind request was that whether this food could be warmed up, because he didn't even had a place to warm up the food.
On przygotowywał się do koncertu, do występu w konkursie w Toruniu i przychodził do nas do punktu ćwiczyć gry na akordeonie, bo nie miał gdzie tego ćwiczyć.
At the same time, and at that time, he was preparing to take part in a competition, a music competition. He didn't have a place where he could practice because now somebody, how to say harmonia in English? Accordion, of course. So he is a professional accordion player, and he had no place to practice. So he also visited the assistance center so that he could have a place to practice.
Ja go często widziałam w punkcie i zapytałam u dziewczyn wolontariuszy, co to jest za chłopak i gdzie są jego rodzice, co on tu robi codziennie.
So I saw this young man, and I was asking my associates, who is he? What is he doing? He's coming every day. He's playing accordion.
Okazało się, że on ma 17 lat, on boi się komukolwiek o tym powiedzieć, że on nie ma w Polsce rodziców, dlatego że boi się, że go deportują na Ukrainę.
So it turned out that he was 17 at that time, and in fact he was afraid to tell anyone that he was underage because he was afraid of being deported.
No i wtedy nie miałam innego wyjścia, jak osobiście pojechałam z nim do sądu, złożyłam wniosek o opiekę i stałam się jego opiekunem i teraz mam syna.
So I had no other choice than to, in fact, offer my own guardianship. So I took him to court and became his guardian. So I've got a son now.
Bogdan wyjechał specjalnie, żeby móc dalej uczyć się i we wrześniu, w październiku teraz właśnie też dołączył do studentów UMK.
So Bogdan, in fact, stayed in Torun. He turned 18. And he has been a freshman at the Faculty of Economics, actually just next building from here. And he was, just a short footnote, not from Tatiana, but from myself, he was with us yesterday evening. I hope he comes also during the day. So he's a student of this university now.
Później po kilku miesiącach przyszedł czas na to i ja miałam czas na to, żeby opowiadać o swojej działalności, dlatego że wcześniej nie miałam na to czasu.
So after some time, I started also to publicize about our activities and to, well, share the experience, because previously in the first weeks and months I actually had no time for that.
Dużo osób, każdy chciał pomagać tak jak mógł i osoba, która miała kamerę i potrafiła nagrywać filmy, to chciała nagrywać filmy o mojej działalności, a wcześniej ja jej na to nie pozwalałam, bo nie miałam na to czasu.
So the thing is that you know, people have skills and everybody wanted to help, to use their skills for some good and benefit. So for instance, people who were like filmmakers wanted to make a short movie and etc. But previously I didn't have time for that. But after some time I decided it's important also to inform the public about what we do.
O naszej działalności dowiadywało się coraz więcej ludzi i przyjeżdżały też zagraniczni goście.
Yeah, so more and more people were informed about what we do. We received some visits and some people were coming. And if I may, I just wanted to mention that John visited the center, Tatiana's center in May. You can see him on the first picture over there. So yes, we were really honored to see what was going on there. That was early May, wasn't it? Was it first week of May or second week of May? Yes.
Przez 2 miesiące wydawaliśmy posiłki z World Central Kitchen.
So over 2 months we were also offering meals from the World Central Kitchen, which might sound a bell.
A po środku taka pani ma na imię Izumi, pani jest z Japonii, mieszka w Toruniu.
And this lady in the front picture, her name is Izumi. She's Japanese. She works and lives in Torun.
Ona przywoziła nam bardzo dużo rzeczy dla dzieci, a teraz Izumi już miesiąc zatrudnia Ukrainki, żeby gotowały ukraińskie jedzenie i wydawano u nas w punkcie.
Okay. So she brought a lot of items for kids, for children, but also for some time she employs Ukrainian ladies, and they cook. Oni gotują po japońsku czy po ukraińsku?
Właśnie, Japonka im mówi, jakie ukraińskie dania gotować.
Okay, so the Japanese owner, tells Ukrainians what kind of Ukrainian food they should prepare.
Na dzień dzisiejszy w ostatnich miesiącach dużo Ukraińców wyjechało, wróciło na Ukrainę i my opiekujemy się mniejszą ilością rodzin tutaj stacjonarnie i większą ilość darów wysyłamy do Polski, na Ukrainę.
So over the last weeks or months, the situation a bit changed because some people returned to Ukraine. However, what we're trying to do is now to collect resources, collect items and send them directly to Ukraine, also in terms of providing support for our army, for our military.
Ja pochodzę z Ukrainy, znam tam dużo osób i stwierdziłam, że nie będę wysyłała pomocy na jakieś huby albo centra wolontariatu, a będę do konkretnych osób wysyłała konkretne paczki.
Since I am from Ukraine, I have connections there, I decided that this assistance should be targeted, that it should include specific items for specific people, because I know the realities.
No i jeszcze co dzisiaj jeszcze robimy, to właśnie chcemy, żeby nasza pomoc była bardziej konkretna i żeby pomagać w konkretnych sprawach.
So let me now tell you about what we are doing at the very moment. In fact, we are trying to deliver specific items for specific needs. So let me tell you about our very recent initiative to, well, provide a specific thing.
Kiedy jedna z rodzin, mama z dwójką dzieci wróciła na Ukrainę, to dowiedzieliśmy się o tym, że jej mąż pracuje w szpitalu polowym jako lekarz i oni potrzebują pomocy.
So from one of the families that came back to Ukraine from Torun, we learned that there is a need for a van for military hospital. So there was the husband of the woman who came back to Ukraine. So we learned that the doctors have no transportation, or it's very difficult to find transportation from the hospital to provide assistance in the field, in a military hospital.
Ten samochód, którym oni teraz jeżdżą na zmiany, zmieniają się w tym szpitalu polowym, jest w bardzo dużym stanie i chcielibyśmy jemu wysłać nowy.
So the thing was that there was a car, but it was in terrible condition. The thing is that we initiated, zbiórka po polsku? Collection, yeah. So we initiated a collection to offer and try to ensure to get them a new van.
Tak, i mam nadzieję, że już w przyszłym tygodniu zakończymy tą zbiórkę, bo zostało nam bardzo nieduże.
Yes, so well, we do hope that the collection might come to an end soon, because not much was left, and this young medics, they need the van. So let me also yes, I'd like to make a footnote here as well, because well, that's quite important. Where the local community also joined in, donated their what they could. Obviously, I would encourage our great colleagues and friends from Loyola University, if you could take a closer look at this particular slide. It wouldn't harm, because it is about well, finding opportunities and finding some specific possibilities to donate for greater good, and I am, well, more than sure that this is trustworthy and really good idea. So if you could please take a good look at that, what's needed, that would be very much appreciated.
Tak, będziemy wdzięczni za wsparcie tej zbiórki, jeśli Państwo chcą w taki sposób pomagać.
If that would be your wish to of course choose this way to assist, obviously we wouldn't mind it.
Dlatego, że wiem, że każda osoba chce pomagać w różny sposób. Niektórzy chcą pomagać dzieciom, niektórzy chcą pomagać w edukacji, niektórzy chcą tylko na wojsko pomagać.
Well, I know from my experiences of the last months that there are different preferences of those wanting to help. Some people, for instance, want to provide assistance and help and donate for kids. Some want to offer donations and offer assistance for the army, for well, like direct military equipment. So there are, I understand, we know that there are different preferences.
I właśnie na tym polegała moja praca, moje działanie od początku wojny. Ja koordynowałam tą pomoc.
So that was exactly, well, that was what I was doing. I was trying to be useful, trying to coordinate the assistance so that it went in the right directions, in the right hands.
Dlatego, że jest łatwiej pomagać wtedy, kiedy razem pomagamy.
Well, so it's easier to assist when we assist together, when we are together.
Dziękuję bardzo.
Thank you for your attention. Yes, so we now
We'll
make
entertain any questions or comments for a few minutes. In general, or as to Tatiana? Todd's having a secret ones.
So I found that like period products, diapers, baby formulas are often like really necessary during like these times, and they often get overlooked. Did you ever see that happen within your own facility, or did you ever have like, or were those like not scarce and that you found?
I missed the first part.
No, you're
Now I will pay attention.
So I found that a lot of feminine hygiene products, such as period products, like tampons, pads, and then also items for like mothers and like diapers or baby formula are often scarce during these times. Did you ever see that like discrepancy during like this warehouse work?
Okay, so I'll. The thing is, okay, I need to. I need to switch.
Thank you for question. Tak, dlaczego takie artykuły były potrzebne? Dlatego, że uciekały przed wojną 95% kobiet.
Well, it was indeed the case that persons fleeing from the war, well, 95% of them were women. So that's why the hygienic items, etc., of that kind.
Brałam udział też w takiej akcji, kiedy robiliśmy takie różowe kosmetyczki dla kobiet, które stoją w kolejkach na granicy.
I also took part in this kind of activities that we were preparing such pink packets for women queuing at the border, queuing to access the border point.
Ale jako ciekawostka, to ostatnio, kiedy wysyłaliśmy pomoc na Ukrainę, to żołnierze u nas poprosili o podpaski.
Well, interestingly, when we were last, dispatching a van with assistance, imagine that also, male soldiers requested us for female hygiene items.
Dlatego, że kiedy oni wkładają je do butów, to oni mają przez kilka dni suchą stopę.
Since when you put these hygienic items to their shoes, their feet remain dry for a couple of days. Yep.
Czy ja odpowiedziałam na pytanie pani?
Yeah. Did I answer your question? Yep. There was a raised hand. Okay, so, yeah.
Other questions directed to Ms. Demska?
Yes, raised hand. Yep. Okay.
Hi, I was wondering if there were any mental health services that were kind of demanded in need, and if so, like what approaches were being made to make sure that these refugees were receiving the help?
Tak jak powiedziałam, nasza pomoc zmieniała się co miesiąc, co tydzień i codziennie. Rodzaj naszej pomocy.
Yes, so indeed, as I was saying, our let's say offer, so our assistance changed every day or every week, depending on the circumstances.
I faktycznie ta pomoc psychologiczna była bardzo potrzebna nie tylko kobietom, ale też dzieciom.
And in fact, that was the case, that the psychological assistance was very needed, not only for the adults, not only for the women, also for the kids.
Na dzień dzisiejszy ja w swoim stowarzyszeniu Dobra dla Dobra zatrudniam psychologa, która cały czas właśnie codziennie ma konsultacje z kobietami.
And actually in our association I employ a psychologist who has daily consultations for those who need them.
Ta pomoc jest bardzo potrzebna, ale ja też uważam, że nam tutaj Polakom też ta pomoc będzie potrzebna.
So that is indeed, well, let's say a very well needed assistance, but also I think that that kind of assistance might be required not only for Ukrainians, but for us Poles as well.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Don't hesitate to, yes. There are some, I know that there are some.
Let me also say there's some questions here, and I think there's a couple of patterns here. There's some questions around Putin and what's going to happen going forward. There's a lot of questions around the economics of the war, but there's quite a few questions, so we can't go all these right now, but there are quite a few related to refugee questions, Poland's history with refugees. So I think maybe I know Bojan had a question, but maybe we could try to answer a few of these. And I am also thinking that you might be the best one around some of this, the history of refugee issues, and also, Professor, you would be an excellent. So go ahead, Bojan, and then we'll ask one or two of these.
Including yourself, identifying as Paul, and that kind of made me think, do you, I understand you came much before the war, like many other Ukrainians were in Poland, over 1 million Ukrainians were in Poland before the war. Do you think there will be a lot of settlers, people from Ukraine who will stay in Poland? Ja teraz po polsku.
Ja zrozumiałam pytanie, dziękuję. Tak. Mówię my Polacy, dlatego że ja tu już jestem 17 lat, mam obywatelstwo polskie i czuję mentalność polską.
Yes, so I say we Poles because I am here for 17 years. I am Polish, I have Polish nationality, and I can feel the Polish mentality.
I dla mnie to też było szok i duże zaskoczenie, że tak dużo Ukraińców przyjechało.
And for me, that was also a kind of shock, and I didn't expect that many Ukrainians would arrive.
I odpowiadając na Pani pytanie, to różne są osoby z różnymi historiami i bardzo dużo osób chce i pragnie wrócić do Polski. Ja bym powiedziała, że jakieś 50% osób, na Ukrainę, 50% osób, którzy przyjechali i już wrócili.
And to answer your question about well, settlers, well, actually, indeed, a lot of people want to come back, and I assess that more or less 50% of people have came back. Już wrócili?
Już wracają i mają zamiar i wrócili.
Yes, so Tatiana's estimation is that the half of Ukrainians who arrived either already came back or intend to come back.
Zostaną tutaj ci, którzy mieli wcześniej tutaj rodziny i oni tu zostaną.
Those who had families here earlier or who work here, they will stay.
Ale obserwujemy tam dużo takich sytuacji, na przykład rodziny wracają do Charkowa.
But we also see sometimes these different situations. For instance, some families come back to Kharkiv.
Wiemy, że tam jest bardzo niebezpiecznie, ale oni nie mają jak tutaj zostać.
We also know, well, it's very dangerous there, but the problem is that they have no possibility to stay here.
Dlatego, że po 6-8 miesiącach Polacy już nie tak chętnie wpuszczają do swoich domów i nie mają gdzie mieszkać.
I asked why is it a problem for them to stay longer, and Tatiana says that in fact after 6 or 7 months the Poles are less ready to continue providing this accommodation and to provide facilities. So the problem is that, there was this first wave of assistance enthusiasm, but it's not like now there is too many flats or lodging. So it's a problem now to continue to find accommodation.
Państwowy program pomagał przez 4 miesiące.
There was a state-sponsored program that was useful for the first 4 months.
Ale dużo osób nadal uważa, że Ukraina to jest najlepszym krajem, że Ukraina jest bardzo rozwinięta pod każdym kątem i że bardzo, bardzo tęsknią i chcą wrócić.
And also the point is that a lot of Ukrainians who arrived, consider Ukraine simply as the best place to live despite everything, and they miss their homeland a lot, desperately miss Ukraine, and they want to come back.
Jeszcze dodam, że ja planuję teraz spotkanie w tym tygodniu dla kobiet, dla Ukrainek, które prowadziły swoje biznesy na Ukrainie i którym jest tutaj ciężko odnaleźć się.
And let me also just add one thing that it's next week I plan to have a meeting with women who had their businesses in Ukraine. They had to abandon their businesses, but I want to talk with them how could they continue, how could they start again to continue their business activities.
I też będę dzieliła się swoim doświadczeniem w przyszłym tygodniu w Warszawie, w jaki sposób da się w obcym kraju, nie znając języka, da się zorganizować i działać.
And also I will be sharing these experiences also in other fora next week in Warsaw, how to survive, how to function in a country where sometimes you don't know the language and what to do in order to be to go on.
Let me tackle to the others a couple of the written questions just to keep. Yeah, and we'll take your question next. Written question and I'll direct this to my Polish colleagues first, Michał, and if Piotr, Tomasz, you want to comment as well, but because I know Bill and I have an answer to this one, but without downplaying the atrocity of the Russian invasion or the humanitarian efforts, it is in the war. We should acknowledge Poland's previous stance on accepting refugees from other places, such as Afghanistan. What is there to be said for those watching others be welcomed into Poland with open arms who were turned away not long ago?
Okay, I can try to tackle that, but of course, Tatiana, jeżeli chcesz odpowiedzieć też na to może odpowiedz, a ja mogę potem, jasne, a ja potem. So why, perhaps Tatiana could also, could tackle the question. I could add a word or two. Okay, so, okay, sure.
Przyjęli i zaoferowali to serce i pomoc, ale z kolei były problemy z przekroczeniem granicy białoruskiej i z migrantami ze strony Białorusi. Czy spotkała się też z tym?
Tak, był na początku taki problem, że takie osoby wykluczone były z programów pomocowych państwowych.
So the problem is that the non-Ukrainian refugees were excluded from state-sponsored assistance programs.
Natomiast już po tygodniu został zmieniony ten program i już można było rejestrować się.
But after a week or two, this actually changed. So also non-Ukrainian refugees could apply for some kinds of assistance.
Każda sytuacja była nowa dla wszystkich, dlatego państwowe regulacje też się zmieniały i dostosowywały się do potrzeb.
Yeah, situation was dynamic and also state regulations were adapted to the new circumstances. But also, since John asked for some comment on my part, I can provide a comment because, I think you are aware that in 2021, I think it was August, there was a situation of, a grave situation that was, of course, many months before the war, that there was a wave of foreigners, immigrants trying to cross the border between Poland and Belarus. And in fact, these were people from, well, far away, from Iraq, from Afghanistan, from some African countries. And the problem was that the Belarusian authorities brought them. People were trying to access Polish territory, and that became violent at some point. That the Polish border guards were pushing them back, and there was some situation where they were actually having a camp on almost no one's land because Poland didn't want to let them in, and Belarus also considered that they are already not on their territory. That situation included women and children also, and there were also casualties. And this situation ended up in Poland building a wall, actually, which is not something that I think that our country should be proud of. You know that there's an issue also a wall on the US-Mexican border, right? So, and now the John's question or your question was about how to, understand the situation where on the one part Poland pushes back immigrants from far away, and also those fleeing from war. On the other hand, also opening arms and receiving millions of those fleeing from the war in Ukraine. And now, my answer is that indeed you do have some feeling that you cannot probably, or you shouldn't, you cannot divide refugees into group of the bad ones and the good ones. The problem is that normally a person who flees from war is entitled to protection, and if there are valid reasons to do so, I would say that, without going into too much detail, Poland does have a framework of protection of those fleeing from war zones. Now, the problem with this Polish-Belarusian border was that at the same time, it's a difference if you apply for protection and you report at the crossing, at the border point, and when you try just to cross the border just like that. So that's a little difference. But it's a shame that in 2021, a lot of people, very desperate people, were facing the very brutal reality and let's say this less humane face of the Polish state. That these were not the I don't know exactly how many, but there were hundreds, at least hundreds of those who were trying to cross the border this way. I would say, John, well, I do have a problem here. I see the problem, I am very much, I consider myself a human rights person. Yes, and many of us do as well. For me, indeed, there might have been cases where people were trying to cross the border illegally. Right? But each situation is different. You know what? You could see and hear these comments in the press that, well, also the difference was that in 2021, this wave of immigrants trying to cross the Polish-Belarusian border, these were, in fact, let's say 80% young men. In 2022, that was a very different situation. You have 95% of women and children or elderly. On the other hand, it's not that young men are completely deprived of any kind of protection and that they don't have any human rights. They also do have human rights. Again, it was a very sad situation, and there is a wall, but I don't think it's a solution.
Let me just add, because it's a very good question. We may want to pick it up later, but and I'd like to hear from the other Polish people, but I think the Belarus situation is a little bit different, kind of an adjunct, but the EU gave Poland and other countries a quota of refugees from Syria, Afghanistan, Middle East, 6,500, and the government categorically rejected it. And we talked a little bit about this Saturday. Kaczynski made some comments about it's going to hurt and ruin our culture. So that's what's being said. I'm not going to, it's not my view, but that's what's out there. The other things, and we can comments later because we're going to stay on schedule, but has been suggested that the reason that the Ukraine refugees were welcomed and the other people were not were proximity to the country, common enemy, Russia, and some people have suggested racism, because Poland is a 97% white country. So that's been proffered. I'm not saying, these are not my views, but those are the reasons that have been offered, and with respect to that. Could be some good discussion in your human rights class, Miel. But there's one other microphone out there. Somebody? I know. Somebody had a microphone, though. Did you want to ask a question?
Yeah, it's a question.
A shorter one.
Yeah, it's short, don't worry. It's just regarding the guardianship. I know that you had said that you had been working with guardianship with like the government regarding the youth that were coming without a guardian. So I was just wondering, how did this process look like, and were there any accommodations being made for this process given the situation and the conflict in their home country?
Mm-hmm. But you're asking about the guardianship over minors, over the undereducated.
To była bardzo uproszczona formuła rejestracji, to trwało 15 minut w sądzie.
So the procedure was not very complicated. It took 15 minutes in court, this whole procedure.
Jeśli przyjeżdżali sportowcy, to oni przyjeżdżali pod opiekę konkretnego trenera, który ich zapraszał.
For instance, those minors who arrived here at the invitation of sports club, they were like officially under the guardianship of the coaches who invited them.
Często przyjeżdżały dzieci z innymi członkami rodziny, z dalekimi członkami rodziny, z ciocią.
It also happened that some children arrived with members of a distant family, and this required some formalities to grant guardianship to these distant family members.
Więc przeważnie do kogoś oni przyjeżdżali, czyli nie byli na ulicy, więc każda osoba, nawet starsze rodzeństwo, mogło przejąć tą opiekę.
So finding a guardian was not extremely hard, because more often than not they arrived to and they had somebody, a distant person or an adult sibling who could take over the guardianship.
Okay, let's take a break. Let's resume.
Okay, thank you. Thank Tatiana very much.
Thank you very much.